Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here, and get ready for Gnosis. Well, let's cover the non-physical, if you can really call it that, bases the physical. Now, this is the biggest problem between real science, otherwise known as alchemy, that really comes from the ancients, who figured all this out. They didn't need cranes and electrical power to achieve anything, or they probably had some sort of power, but the crudeness of the physical actually stops you from going into higher levels of reality. But all of quantum physics, now the understood and accepted pretty much 100%. Now, all of the scientists all claim that quantum physics is what we use today and everything is based on it. Now, again, that isn't me, that isn't my opinion. This is what all the scientists, if you can really call them that, now agree with. And they keep coming up with new non-physical energies, which they claim are physical, to start explaining things. Well, since instead of using energetic informational fields, they're using the boson fields. And these things are so tiny, they are so difficult to identify that who can really believe what they're telling us anyway? So the whole idea is, are they finding anything of any kind of particular value? Well, you can't find anything physical of value. No matter how you look at it, there's a problem. And the problem, plain and simple, is that anything that is physical and not energetic is extremely limited. Now, the difference is you got to remember that quantum, and people love that term, ooh, it's quantum, ooh, sounds futuristic. It's the smallest degree of measurement you can find, meaning quantum. So they had a James Bond movie called The Quantum of Solace, is what I believe, because that's the forgiveness he gave to, I believe, someone who either killed his wife or friend or whatever. So, so the tiniest amount is what quantum means. But what it's saying is that there's something there. Well, there's always something there, but we need to understand that there is something there, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it is measurable with the primitive stupidity that we are basing our 100-year-old got-nowhere physics and our 500-year Newtonian nonsense, which has pretty much been totally disproved. But he proved it to himself, because when he came into his equations, he made up math to explain it. He made it up. He didn't use the math we have. He made up. I believe he was the one who gave us calculus. But it's made up, like all math is, and that's always my problem with it. But you got to remember that math is part of the made-up human consciousness, so it can be very powerful because we translate everything into numbers so that we can understand and digest them, because we're kind of little goofy humans that don't get it. So we need to explain it with numbers. That's why it's so important. That's why radionics tends to work so well. So we're putting everything in a number. You can't call this the Babadook energy field. Nobody cares. I don't get it. What's Babadook and what's energy field? No, it's a 12, 15, 35. Oh, I get it. Yeah, put that down. I buy it. So this is what we. So it's very important to use numbers, and that's why our consciousness works on actually shape, form, vibrations, sigils, energies that vibrate. Now, this is what goes deep into your consciousness, but you have to get past the physical mind, and this is where numbers come in. So without diversing too much, so let's go into the physical and, quote, non-physical. Well, first of all, informational energetic fields are physical. You can measure them. You can measure them even today. If I had many millions of dollars, I'd have a little meter that I could do it with. We have little meters. They're called pendulums. They're called using different methods, muscle testing. There's all sorts of things that you can do because it has to come through that giant supercomputer, otherwise known as yourself. Now, the problem with this is that there are errors because it's so human-based. But isn't everything human-based? We're trying to think it's not. Einstein, all of his mathematics, when he came out with his first theory, was all wrong. It had to all be fixed. Oh, he didn't make a mistake because you're scientist. Oh, yeah. Of course, he made all the mistakes. Newton's work is all wrong. Everybody agrees to this. Of course, they won't tell you. But the bottom line is that it's all wrong. So this is one of the problems. And being able to go into a neutral state and gather information without you being prejudiced in other things takes a little bit of work, but it's not that difficult. That is called centering. Building your abilities to actually sense things is what you do in the mind gym. So, I mean, people go to school for 4 years to learn all this mathematics and physics. Well, certainly someone can spend several months or even several years to perfect these things in the same type of manner. And these can then be, if there was a trained group of people, they would be getting very similar results. So don't think that it's all different, because it tends to be different when you check energetic fields, because informational energetic fields are changing all the time. So that's why a rate that is taken one time is not going to be good in even a few minutes, because there's going to be slight changes. But it's still that particular energy field. You're just measuring the intricacies to it. And a lot of things that you measure, if you wanted to be very finite with it, which is what informational energetic field or radionic rates are changing all the time. So there's if you look at electrical energy, if you were to get down to the microvolts, you would see that they're constantly changing. Well, that means the electricity ain't really what it is. It's changing all the time. Well, that's right. They just want to tell you, yeah, in the bigger picture, yeah, all of the electrical volts are about the same. So, but if you get down into microvolts, things are constantly changing. There's wire differences. Each plug is different. Each electrical product you're using is slightly different. But in the ballpark, yeah, in the ballpark it works. So we need to understand that. But, nobody explains things like this, because science wants to come off like they know something when they really don't. But quantum physics is the smallest possible measurement of something. That's right, and it doesn't necessarily have to be physical in the way that scientists think about it. It has to be energetic physical, informational energetic fields. Now, this is already being done because they're starting to label all these things, because they're so minute, if you can even say they're there, that they're really just picking up information energetic fields. They're starting to call these things energy and fields, because they're really not physical to the level that even quantum physics states things are. So we have to understand that. So the physical versus the non-physical. Now, what scientists are saying, well, we can't sense it, so it isn't there, and so that's just a fantasy. Well, just because something isn't proved doesn't mean that it is wrong. Now, regular science says that. Just because you can't prove it doesn't mean that it's not existent and it's real. Now, the point is, we can prove all this. There's people that have proved this for over 100 years. There's been massive research. All these people are laughed at and discredited by basically what are criminals, deviants, and mouthpieces for corporations. That's what your debunkers and skeptics are. There is no credibility with them. You can't believe in science and say you're a skeptic. If you're a skeptic, you don't believe in anything. You say, well, we got to prove it. Maybe science right today, maybe it's wrong tomorrow. Well, that's what a true skeptic is. And here again we have facts. Science has been wrong continually. It changes all the time. So how can you be a skeptic or a debunker and say, well, science is right? What do you mean science is right? We've already proved that's wrong, so the way that you're analyzing this is 100% wrong. So we have to understand, and we have to kind of redefine what we call the physical, which is basically energy, and energy is physical. Now, people don't quite understand this, and we need to really define things. I always like to use the term X-ray. Now, most of us have had an X-ray. Does anything physical happen? Well, really not. You go in a place, and we know how toxic they are, and you sit someplace and a little switch goes, and basically it's like having your picture taken. That's it. You walk out of there, and then they develop the picture, and you can find out what is looking at a particular bone or structure or whatever. Well, what physical happened? Well, X-rays are physical? Well, not really. X-rays are energetic informational fields. They're energy. So, are they potent? Well, of course they're potent. So the bottom line, if you were x-rayed too many times or at high volumes, you die. So that's taking something that is very unphysical, you can't see it, touch it, or feel it, and turning it into something that dramatically affects you. Plain and simple. I always use the example, well, would you rather be x-rayed 1,000 times or punched in the face? Well, the point is, most, well, I don't want to be punched in the face. Well, it'd be much better than being x-rayed 1,000 times, because a punch in the face you heal from, and x-rays, you die. And we see this with everything. The problem with nuclear power and other things is they're not putting out a, quote, physical energy that knocks you down directly. The energetic informational fields rip into you and kill you. So it's just the density of this energy that we want to debate here, and that's very important to understand. So when scientists claim that all this stuff that they can't figure out because they're ignorant, backward, and, really hurt society. I mean, I'm going to be doing a lecture on the fact of, really, is all our problems in life really come down to scientists okaying it? Well, it wasn't mad men who have tried to take this world and destroy it over, who are continuing to doing it. They have been empowered by people that do little things like build atomic bombs. So who's really the problem here? And of course, all these things are done in defensive manners, and of course, every single weapon ever developed has been used on its own people. So it's just the way it goes. So as we move through all of this, we need to fully understand that. So the fact that something is informational energetic field does not in any way lessen the fact of how physical it is. Again, these very limited pea-brained scientists can't wrap their head around energy fields that create everything. So everything starts out as this energy field, which is actually quite strong, and starts condensing into what we could say is very primitive matter until it becomes very solid. That's how everything in the universe works, and to a large extent, all of this is agreed upon by regular scientists. So they want to say that things start from the physical and build from there. Well, that's the backwards way of looking at it, and things don't work like that. Plain and simple, something has to start from what is considered energy fields to move into what is considered solid fields, or solid matter. So this is where they tend to disagree, because they can't put a meter on it. Well, they can't put a meter on it because, first of all, they're brainwashed and controlled by a system that is seeking to pat itself on the back. They're not seeking discoveries, just like the medical industry is not seeking cures. They're seeking treatments to make money off of. You cure people and you're out of a job. That's how all the world looks at things. So it's really sad. So when we're looking at these things, we need to understand the fact that they have no idea what they're doing. And if you get caught in this particular problem, well, all science stops. If you think that everything comes from the physical, you are already wrong, because we have shown that that is just nonsense. But you're never going to discover anything that way. People, and the one way you can really tell if a scientist knows what they're talking about is the fact of their openness to, quote, bioenergetic human functions. I hate to use the term psychic because it's been pooed upon. These different abilities that people have, which are astonishing, that somebody can give you a very accurate psychic reading, that they can go back in your past life. All these things, that they can heal you at a distance, have been proven and proven time and time again for 150 years, and have been dismissed because the people in power don't know enough, and they will not get involved in it. I had this problem many years ago with interviewers when I was popular doing interviews. Well, a lot of people didn't want to talk to me because what are they going to ask? I know nothing about this stuff. How can I interview? I'm in a very bad position. So they don't do it. They think they can get research or something such as that, and they can't discuss it with it. They know absolutely nothing. And science is the same way. Well, I'm not going to give up all my years of training. I'm not going to turn over my thought patterns or our research to something that we have no background in. So it has nothing to do whether it's valid or not. They're just ignorant buffoons. And they want to perpetrate this. And basically, these are crimes against humanity because we're not getting anywhere because they keep closing the door to the answers. And of course, this is something that's been going on for thousands of years as primitive societies, the Bavarians, or I should say the Barbarians, the primitive people who have come to these cities and have raped and robbed everyone with their primitive weapons. But, it's effective to overcome people who really have something. And that's, of course, what science is doing. So the whole idea is that this is how scientific thought works, and it's wrong. But the bottom line is that this is not something that is just not there. And, of course, that's what they like to say. Well, I can't find it. It's not there. Well, the fact that you can't find it means absolutely nothing. Nothing was thought of. You know that the discovery of oxygen is fairly new? Somebody had to put stuff in a bottle and then figure out, well, there's oxygen. There's things called air out there. This is new. Almost everything we know is new. So understanding gravity and everything else, well, it's always been there. Well, show me a picture of gravity. Show me a picture of oxygen. Well, the point is there isn't this. You can't take a picture of air. So the bottom line is that all these things are the non-physical that because they've been able to kind of think there's something there, have declared it part of science. Well, it's not. It's not there. It's not overly seen. But people can prove it in one way or another. And you can do that with anything if you put your energy to it. But 150 years of research into all these areas, which astonishing, correct and cases from certain individuals that are just, as I said, astonishing, is being ignored. So it's being ignored because they don't really know what to do with it. And they don't want to empower people to upset the system. We don't need scientists. We need people who get results. We need people who are manufacturers, builders, etc. And this doesn't mean, again, a physical product. We need people to go out and develop psychic technologies that make things happen. So we've seen this with people that are able to move giant rocks and other things. Well, how did they do this? Well, the point is that this is irrefutable facts, and everybody wants to take easy cop-outs, even to the fact that aliens did it, when it's humans who move these giant stones with some very advanced technology. But they were idiots, remember that. They're just knuckle-dragging freaks. We know how to build something with a giant crane. So this is the kind of nonsense that keeps being perpetrated out there by scientists who are leading us down a primrose path into destruction. So it's really crimes against humanity with their ignorance. Because they're not open-minded at all, because their schools don't teach it, which means their educations, which basically are worthless, and their degrees and their pocketbook and the checks they get every week or month are worthless. They're not going to come out and say that, though. So the physical against the non-physical really is not an argument. It's not something that is important. These are physical manifesting energies, plain and simple. Now, the fact, as I said, that some idiots can't measure these has nothing to do with anything except their incompetency and lack of proper training. So basically it comes down to the same thing. Quantum physics is just the explaining of the occult sciences, and some of it isn't even changed that much. When you talk about a connection or quantum physics has been done in all sorts of metaphysical practices where you connect to someone else at some other place to do good or bad. Well, this is quantum physics. We already said everything is intertwined and connected with each other, and this has been proven by regular scientists that this effect works. So all of this comes together into the same thing. Of course, they won't claim anything until they discover it. They say they proved it, so it stays within their institutions because they're not going to go out of that. But it's very sad that it has come down to this kind of nonsense. So the bottom line is that all of these things, radionic rates, are physical. Psychic powers are physical. healing energies projected are physical. People who do astral projection are physical. There's all sorts of different brain states, different levels of physicality, and they're all there. So the fact that this is just some sort of strange energy, well, we got to stop listening to these goo-goo practitioners. And that's what they're doing. They're imbecilic children just goo-gooing their old stupid science to try and affect people who really know what's going on. So we got to tell these goo-gooers to go back to goo-goo land and kindergarten and start getting with the program. What you've done has failed. You have no breakthroughs. You're living if I was to say, you want the invention of today, or in the last year, or do you want the one that was invented 500 years ago, with the wooden boats and no toilets or toilet paper? By the way, that's a fairly new invention. But let's go back to those glorious times. And of course, we follow our entire life is based on that, based on these bizarre freaks that were scientists at the time, like Newton, who was a strange sexual deviant probably, and a spouting religious maniac. And we take little bits and pieces of that. The goofball Einstein, who married his cousin. Who was thought of to be a retard, whose all of his initial papers were wrong. So the whole idea is that that's what you're basing everything on. So this is what society is based on, because their structures have put together some sort of answers that they have justified to keep their situation going. And this is the problem when you have dumbademia controlling things, because really it's just a money game again. Life all boils down to a money game because we all have to eat and have a house over our heads, so we have to do what whoever's in command tells us to do. So this is very sad, and it's causing all the problems we have today. But there's nothing non-physical about the entire subtle energy physics, and that's why I like that term, subtle energy. They're subtle energies. They're difficult to measure because we don't have the money to build all these devices, to measure them properly, because regular science doesn't want to give up their control over to someone else, even though what they do is wrong, doesn't produce anything for over hundreds of years. And let's get it clear, as I always like to say as kind of a closing here, we're not talking about engineering. Now, there's science and there's engineering. Engineering is producing a physical result. So everybody wants to say, well, it wasn't for science. Well, if it wasn't for engineering, we've taken the theories or the hypothesis, which is what some idiots like to use now to think that that's a more important word than theory. We've taken that and then we've made a physical thing out of it, meaning this produces plastic, this produces a steel that holds this amount of weight, this produces a circuit. Now, these are things that the science has said, well, maybe it works like this, and then it's been proven through engineering. And this is a big difference. And we've kind of come far with all that stuff, but we still have absolutely no idea how any of these ancient things were made. It goes back to the old cliche of the pyramids, but it's not just the pyramids in Egypt. There are buildings all over the planet that we just don't understand how they did any of it. And we couldn't repeat that today. Even moving in large tools, well, they can't pick up that much weight. So how did they do it? And this is the tip of the iceberg because we don't understand any of that. There were demonstrations at one time of using sound vibrations to move giant blocks. I mean, all of these things seem to be real. The Coral Castle in Florida, giant blocks this guy moved all by himself, and they try and rationalize his even if it is radio frequencies, how did he do it? We can't do that today. And I like the little games they play there. But apparently none of that really was true. He put up a bunch of stuff for the Coral Castle, Lee Scallerman or whatever his name is, to make it look like that's how he did it because he didn't want to explain it. And we never got the secrets from him. So the bottom line is that this is all really fascinating, proven technologies that we just can't figure out. So until the Scientists, and that includes the engineers, can tell us how the pyramids and other structures were made, built, and these bricks removed. Well, do they have any answers? Not really. They don't have any answers whatsoever. We have some primitive engineering. Now, most of the stuff that we build today doesn't work all that great. And we are still doing things cheaply, badly in many engineering. Other things are pretty good, but a lot of practical science, from the internal combustion engine to so many other things, are just garbage technologies that are killing this planet, and we can thank the engineers for not building good ones. But again, it's a complicated story. Why isn't every engineer, every scientist on this planet screaming to get into hydrogen power, which works and is 100% pure? Well, none of them are doing it. They have no credibility. They have no honor. They have no cares beyond their own little front yard. And it's sad, depressing, and really typical of corrupt, evil humans. Until next time.